Dear friends, sometimes when we think of shepherd, the good shepherd, we think only of Jesus. And that is correct, because Jesus is our shepherd. And yet, we also need to think and to understand that we shepherd one another. And how does this happen? Even as we are configured to become like shepherds like Christ, I'm saying, like, for example, myself, when I received the priesthood, then I became a shepherd of God's people. And yet I also learned to be a shepherd. And I tell two wonderful stories of how I learned to be a shepherd. I was assigned for 1 month to help in one of the farthest islands north of the Philippines, already near Taiwan. This is the Batanes group of islands. And I was assigned by our bishop to the farthest areas of those farthest islands. In one of those hills, there were shepherds, and they tended sheep. And for the first time in my life, I saw sheep and I saw shepherds. And of course, I was reminded of the gospel text. There was also a beautiful lighthouse, an old Spanish lighthouse that guided the ships that passed through that part of the sea between the Philippines and Taiwan, going out into the Pacific. A beautiful lighthouse, and I discovered at the base of that lighthouse is also the place where the ship will go. That's also the gate. The door of the lighthouse is the gate, and when there is bad weather, the ship will be led by the shepherd to go into the lighthouse. That afternoon, the weather was bad. It was very cloudy, and soon it was beginning to rain. So I told the ship, go in, go in. The ship did not recognize my voice. They did not follow. So literally, what the gospel text is saying, I experienced. The sheep were scattering away. And the more I called them to the lighthouse, the more they ran away. So I had a problem. It was almost raining. Good thing, the shepherd boys were coming up the hill. Okay, so here comes the shepherd. They will hear his voice. So I wanted to see what the shepherd will do. Will he shout, etc.? What will be the voice of the shepherd? He took out a whistle and blew his whistle, and immediately all the sheep went inside the lighthouse. In that case, the voice of the shepherd was a whistle. I also went inside the lighthouse. So sheep, shepherd, and me, all together inside the lighthouse on that rainy afternoon. When I went down, I suddenly remembered that my old professor was there teaching in the graduate school. He was from that place, and he established a graduate school. He called it St. Dominic's Graduate School. It's still open up to now. There were few professors. He was the founder. He was also the main professor. And on a Sunday, on a rest day, this professor spent 7 a.m. up to 7 p.m. teaching. Teaching the whole day. So after the rain, I went down the hill. I went to the graduate school. My professor was still teaching. 7 p.m. already. I was already hungry. I thought, anyway, I'll just say hi. And then I'll take dinner after. When my professor saw me, that was about the end time of his class at 7 p.m. He saw me and we were very happy. He lectured me for 2 more hours. I wanted to complain. I was hungry. 2 more hours of philosophy lectures. We ended at 9 p.m. But look, this professor was teaching for 12 hours. He also needed to take dinner. And yet we forgot about dinner. We talked about philosophy and ended up at 9 p.m. both hungry. My brothers and sisters, this is what it means to be a shepherd. I learned how to be a shepherd from these 2 shepherds that I encountered that afternoon and evening, way through the evening. A shepherd is literally one who takes care of the sheep. One who would protect the sheep from bad weather, call them out, maybe whistle to them, lead them to that safe refuge, the lighthouse. After all, a lighthouse does not only guide the ships plying through the sea. It also houses sheep after all, and me. But more than the figure of this kind shepherd protecting literally sheep, a professor is also a shepherd. Instead of resting on a Sunday, it was his leisure to talk and talk and talk. What was he teaching? By the way, he's also an anthropologist. And that is why I got inspired to be like him. He was my teacher in philosophy as much as anthropology. He was teaching his fellow Ivatans, their ethno-linguistic group, how to write theses. And they were so surprised that they can write about themselves, that they can write about their lives. They wrote about rituals that they do, how to fish, how they pray, how they offer, how they make boats. The knowledge of making boats is part of those rituals. And they were asking him, really? Can we write about this? Is this philosophy enough? Is this anthropology enough? And he would prod them on. That is why that professor replicated himself. In anthropology, we call it social reproduction, not in the biological sense, but in the intellectual sense. He was not only teaching students, he was making professors like him. But what are professors for? They are made to make us understand that life is beautiful, that truth can be attained, that dreams can be pursued, that life is good and it can be made better if we continue speaking, if we continue teaching. That is Christ. So the Good Shepherd, yes, came down to lay down his life for his sheep, but the Good Shepherd also taught us. The Good Shepherd also made a social reproduction. He allowed us to configure ourselves to be like him who teaches, like him who did not stop talking even when his hearers already found it difficult or even scandalous. They had to crucify him on the cross for his teachings. And yet, he did not stop. And we hear in today's readings that the same people who followed him also began teaching, also began speaking. This is what it means, my brothers and sisters, to be shepherds, and to be shepherds to one another. First, that we actually learn from each other. I have learned from a real shepherd as much as from a professor that has guided me through life. We learn from each other. And when we do, then we multiply shepherds to go out into the world and tell the good news. Let us pray that as we encounter the Lord in His Word and in His table, we may be reconfigured truly to Christ, our Good Shepherd.